Shido is a hopeless loser who struggles to even look a girl in the eyes. However, he is forced to go out with malevolent spirit girls in order to save the world. 30 years ago, powerful magical girls suddenly attacked Earth, causing tremendous disasters worldwide and claiming millions of lives. After some time, these magical girls took a break, giving the world a semblance of peace until recently when they resumed their attacks. To save the world, Shido is compelled to learn the art of romance to win over their hearts. One morning, while having breakfast with his sister, Shido asks what she would like for lunch, and she replies that she wants a snack from a low-class restaurant at school. After they arrive at the restaurant, she suggests they should meet there after school today, no matter what happens if a space earthquake occurs. Meanwhile, a trio of unattractive girls spots them from a distance, questioning if the siblings were raised in Alabama because of how close they appear. After Kotori leaves, a loser named Tanamati grabs Shido. Later in class, while they chat, a white-haired girl interrupts them, calling Shido's name, leaving him wondering who she is. She sits next to him, and Shido asks his foolish friend who she is, surprising Tanamati for not recognizing Toby, the super genius. Toby continues staring at Shido throughout the class, making him feel extremely uncomfortable as he wonders if she intends to take him to bed. Hours later, the bell rings, and Tanamati suggests they head home together, but Shido responds that he has other plans. Tanamati thinks it's with a girl, but Shido clarifies that it's really his little sister, leading Tanamati to state that he expected nothing less from someone whose face is too ugly to attract any girl. Suddenly, an alarm blares, warning the city of an impending space earthquake, and chaos ensues as everyone rushes for shelter. As the city's technology evacuates everyone, Shido wonders where his sister is, hoping she isn't foolish enough to stay at the restaurant waiting for him. He tries calling her but fails. When he checks the GPS to locate her, he realizes she is indeed being foolish and immediately sprints towards the restaurant. On the way, a space bullet suddenly strikes, sending him flying. Soon after, he spots a beautiful girl dressed in an outfit reminiscent of an anime standing amidst the tremors. He contemplates what she's doing there when the girl pulls out a weapon, causing a massive quake behind him, leaving him terrified. She points the gun at him, threatening to annihilate him because she believes he came to kill her. Quickly, he explains that he has no intention of harming her, as he can't even calm Sakai down enough to fly. Just then, the fighters appear, launching missiles, and the mysterious girl deflects them with a force field. She charges at them, releasing tremendous power that astonishes Shido. After a flurry of exchanges, he realizes it's Toby fighting her, leaving him baffled about what's happening. The battle continues as the two girls clash their weapons, unleashing a massive energy wave that knocks Shido unconscious. He wakes up in a facility, seeing a despondent woman named Rain checking on him. She introduces herself as the analysis officer, and when he inquires about his location, she informs him that he's in Fraxinus's infirmary, having been brought there unconscious. This only adds to his confusion. Immediately, he asks about his sister, and Rain advises him not to worry. She then takes him to meet someone who can answer his questions, leading him to realize the person is indeed his sister. She greets him in her command center, appearing authoritative and making him wonder if this is really his little sister. She explains that the strange girl in an anime outfit is a spirit from another world, and they typically destroy an area whenever they appear on Earth, a phenomenon known as space earthquakes. Rain further explains that the attacking group was the AS, an anti-spirit team in Japan responsible for managing the situation, essentially exterminating spirits. Shido immediately realizes that this is why she thought he intended to kill her. Lastly, Rain states there's another way to handle the situation aside from the anti-spirit team, and that's where he comes in. She shocks him by saying he'll begin training the next day. He wonders what he's about to get himself into. When Rain questions why he was out during the emergency, he answers that he was searching for her, but she calls him foolish for believing her words. He insists that GPS indicated she was at the restaurant, and she reveals that she was indeed at the restaurant. The next day, Shido is summoned to a private room where he's introduced to game software resembling a simulation, which is supposed to assist him in training for his upcoming mission. Kotori takes the joystick and demonstrates how the game works. He later finds Toby and asks her what transpired before, and she tells him to forget it. Toby then informs him that his mission is to engage with the spirits, leading him to question if they are all evil. She reveals that she lost her parents 5 years ago due to a deadly spirit encounter. After this, Kotori and Rain begin training Shido, explaining how to converse gently with spirits to make them fall in love with him. They suggest he practice his lines on humans first to determine their effectiveness, or lack thereof. He is tasked with winning over a teacher who has been single for 29 years, but he can only come up with terrible pickup lines with his underdeveloped brain. Yet Rain decides to help him, and with her assistance, he manages to impress the teacher. However, he quickly exits before getting into trouble. Unfortunately, he bumps into someone and accidentally knocks Toby over, exposing her character's armor, which happens to be white. Kotori urges him to make her kneel, but his useless brain only churns out foolish thoughts, leaving Rain disappointed. Afterward, she gives him some final love advice. Hesitantly, he eventually invites Toby out, even if he didn't mean it. Surprisingly, she reciprocates her feelings for him, and he is shocked that she agreed to a date. Just when he tries to explain that it was a joke, an alarm suddenly blares, warning everyone of an imminent space earthquake. Toby quickly rushes off to don her uniform, preparing to take down the evil spirit once again. The spirit from the previous day appears inside a classroom, refusing to exit, making it impossible for Shido to attack. Kotori tells Shido that he is the only one who can handle the situation and save Toby. She reassures him not to worry about what to say because the specialists at Fraxinus will provide directives. Entering the building, Shido is greeted with a laser attack, which would have obliterated anyone else, but he manages to dodge it. He quickly asks her to calm down, and she wonders who he is. The committee of experts assists him in deciding the best thing to say, but she becomes infuriated, nearly wiping him out of existence. She approaches him, ready to send him into oblivion with her powerful magic, and asks why he wants her to die. He quickly tells her he's just a student and wishes her no harm. Realizing he's the idiot she encountered previously, she drops her attack and asks what he wants. He replies that he only came to talk to her, and even if she ignores him, he won't reject her. Upon hearing this, she grows shy, saying he's the first human to ever try to engage her in conversation. He inquires about her name, but she claims she doesn't have one, and asks him to give her one. He names her Toka, meaning 10th, as he first met her on the 10th day of that month, and she's pleased by this. Once he's been patient for a while, he suddenly begins firing at her, but she creates a barrier that deflects all of the shots. She instructs him to leave to avoid being hit. However, he insists on staying to converse with her. As she sits next to him, maintaining a force field above them, shielding them from the intense gunfire, Kotori prompts him to take action. While he responds to Toka, she wonders who he is conversing with and threatens to blow him up, suspecting he is conspiring against her. Suddenly, he invites her out, following Kotori's suggestions, but Toka is bewildered by the meaning of a date. After some deliberation, Toby, wearing her battle gear, lunges at them, believing Toka is holding Shido hostage. Toka acts quickly, activating a massive device called Sandalin, and unleashing an attack that causes the building to collapse. Toby is injured in the process, while Shido looks on in despair at the ruins of the structure. Toka appears behind him unexpectedly, startling him by the absence of a spatial alarm. She claims she came because he invited her out, but Shido objects, stating she can't wear her astral dress on a date. He shows her a photo of Toby in her school uniform, and magically, Toka transforms her attire into the school uniform too. Their date begins as they stroll through the city. Toka excitedly devours everything declared as food along the way, and when she spots some white cream, she beams and declares that she wants that too. Meanwhile, Tanimati is eavesdropping and wonders why there hasn't been a spacequake since Toka arrived this time. Shido asks Toka where she went after disappearing the previous day, and she reveals that whenever she vanishes, she goes to a very dark world to sleep. He inquires if she always comes to this world after awakening, but she prefers to consider it forced to leave her creature-like sleep. She explains that she comes to the human world at irregular intervals and cannot help it. Shido realizes this means the spacequakes aren't caused by spirits, but are merely unintentional accidents. He then asks why this didn't happen today when she appeared, but she refuses to share. Instead, she expresses a desire for more meat in her mouth. When they arrive at a restaurant, Shido attempts to deter her from entering since he has depleted his funds, yet she insists on seeing what they offer. Just then, Tanimati swoops in to save Shido's skin by providing him with some cash. Upon entering the restaurant, Shido is astonished to see Rain and inquires what she is doing there. She replies that they have discovered the truth and come to this world. As he settles down with Toka, she peruses the menu without noticing anything unusual. Suddenly, Kotori appears, shocking him before suggesting that Toka order an extravagant special. Toka begins eating gluttonously once again. When Shido inquires about Kotori and what's going on, she tells him she's simply improving Toka's chances of falling for him since he has a face only a mother could love. When Kotori leaves later on, she instructs Shido to head south of the station after finishing their meal. He follows Kotori's advice, and on the way, the entire residential area transforms into a park to keep their date fun and interesting, allowing Shido to have a real shot at romance for the first time in his pathetic life. As the date continues, with Toka shoving every type of meat into her mouth, Toby is still lurking and soon shifts into her mechanical suit, preparing to strike Toka. Later that night, Toka is exhilarated by the fun she had during the date, voicing her realization that humans can be nice, especially since she once assumed every human wanted to kill her. She claims to understand why the mecha team is pursuing her because she destroys something beautiful every time she appears in this world. She begins feeling out of place, lamenting that she perhaps shouldn't exist in this realm. Shido reassures her that there was no spacequake during her visit today. However, she counters that it was simply due to luck, as who knows what may happen when she returns. Thus, Shido proposes she stay in this world and never leave, promising to teach her everything she needs to know. She expresses doubt, thinking the mecha team and others would never allow a dangerous being like her to remain among them. But Shido insists that he will accept her no matter how they reject her, surprising her and convincing her to hold his hand. Just as she is about to grasp it, Toby, aiming a rifle at Toka, suddenly fires, missing the target and hitting Shido, killing him instantly. Toby is terrified for having just shot Shido. Witnessing this, Toka immediately invokes her astral suit and uses her Sandalin attack against Toby. The spatial distortion alarm blares, causing the Fraxinus team to worry about the people in the city who haven't been evacuated yet. However, Kotori is primarily concerned about Toka, and when her subordinates ask her about Shido, she instructs them to keep working, insisting that Shido won't fall that easily. Suddenly, Shido's gunshot wound begins to glow, and he miraculously comes back to life, shocking everyone. Kotori orders them to recover him immediately. Meanwhile, Toka is fervently unleashing massive waves of energy at Toby, intending to defeat her. Toby feels terrible as she realizes she is no different from the spirits that took her parents 5 years ago. As Toka prepares to deliver the final blow, Toby confesses her sins and utters her last prayers. Suddenly, Shido falls from the sky, and upon seeing him, Toka quickly catches him in an embrace. Her weapon malfunctions due to the surge of energy from her anchor, which confuses everyone about what to do next. Kotori tells Shido to kiss Toka, which he does immediately, removing all of her plot armor in the process. As they return to the ground, she then asks if he'll take her on another date, to which he agrees, despite feeling beaten up. Days later, when Shido returns from school while trying to avoid the rain, he wonders why the weather forecast has been so wrong lately, claiming it wouldn't rain. He notices a young girl named Yoshino falling while playing in the rain, and as he tries to help her, she quickly keeps her distance, pleading for him not to hurt her, catching him off guard. The next day, while heading home from school, Shido questions why it's raining again despite the forecast. He retraces his steps to where he met Yoshino the day before, thinking about her and her little puppet. Suddenly, he runs home. Upon arriving, he takes off his plot armor and heads straight to the bathroom, only to be met with an uncensored vision of Toka's plot. He seeks out Kotori to ask what on earth Toka is doing in his house. Kotori explains that she decided to stay with them, and adds that once he kissed her, he sealed her spiritual powers, creating an invisible bond between them. Shido wonders how he was able to do that, but Kotori admits she doesn't know either, suggesting they'll only find out through analysis at Ratatosker. Kotori also mentions that as Toka's mental state becomes unstable, there's a chance her sealed powers will return to her, and since she seems more at ease with him, it's best she stays there until a dedicated home for spirits is built. Kotori adds that this is a way for him to learn how to win over more girls, causing him to question why he needs more training after successfully sealing Toka's powers. Kotori informs him that many other spirits are out there needing his help. Following this, Kotori sets up various traps for Shido to be mischievous with Toka, all in the name of training. Toka, however, just feels embarrassed and ends up hitting him each time for being a loser. The next day, while Toka and Toby are bickering as usual, a spatial tremor alarm goes off suddenly, prompting everyone to evacuate the building for safety. Toby quickly prepares for battle. Meanwhile, Rain tells Shido that they need to leave Toka behind, since she's effectively useless now that her powers are sealed, and they shouldn't expose her to spirit battle. She hands Toka over to the teacher and rushes to Fraxinus to analyze the situation. Soon they discover that the spirit under attack is the same girl Shido encountered just days ago while returning from school. He promptly decides he will save her, and they prep him for the mission. Later, he enters the building where Yoshino has managed to hide from the attacks of the ST. She quickly reveals herself but says nothing, as her small puppet does all the talking, leading Shido to question why she allows such a useless puppet to speak for her. However, Ratatosker suddenly warns him that Yoshino's mood is rapidly deteriorating and advises him to cheer her up quickly. He invites her on a date, but the naive girl misinterprets it as an invitation to a calendar event. Meanwhile, Toka realizes it's unsafe outside while chatting with some idiots who can't keep their mouths shut. She immediately sets out to find Shido. Yoshino is perched on a high structure practicing acrobatics when Shido pleads with her to come down. She slips and falls onto him, inadvertently kissing him in the process. Not too far away, Toka grows angry and demands to know if that was his plan, leaving him speechless after being caught in the act. Meanwhile, Kotori informs Shido that Toka's powers have returned to her. Enraged, she starts complaining incessantly like a disgruntled housewife while the puppets begin to criticize her, suggesting she's a nuisance and that Shido must be tired of her, hence why he's seeing another girl. Toka, furious, grabs one of the puppets by the neck, threatening to silence it permanently. Yoshino approaches Toka to retrieve her puppet, but Toka refuses, prompting her to demand Shido choose between her and Yoshino. Kotori immediately alerts Shido that Yoshino's mental state is declining. Shido tells Toka to give the puppet back, which only feeds Toka's belief that he prefers Yoshino over her. Suddenly, Yoshino invokes Zadgil, a terrifying beast that controls frost, and she starts attacking them. Shido manages to save Toka, but Yoshino jumps off the building onto Zadgil and escapes while the beast unleashes multiple strikes at Toka and Shido. Shido attempts to reach out to Toka, but she rebuffs him, believing he prefers Yoshino. After that, Toka continues to feel miserable and refuses to speak to Shido. Rain decides to visit her to provide a therapy session and uncover what's wrong. Meanwhile, Kotori and some strange guy analyze what transpired between Shido and Yoshino in the building, pondering why Yoshino's powers weren't sealed even after the kiss. At the same time, Shido roams the streets, searching for Yoshino, when he suddenly spots her little puppet, which she lost while trying to escape the assault. Determined to be nice since he's trying to win her over, Shido begins retracing his steps further. During the therapy session, Toka comments that Shido kissing Yoshino was a mistake, saying that he cares for her so much he might endanger himself just to save her. Meanwhile, as Shido searches for the puppet with Yoshino, her stomach growls suddenly. He decides to take her home to give her something to eat. After she finishes, he asks why she doesn't retaliate when the ST attacks her. She replies that she doesn't like being hurt or the frightening things like the ST. However, whenever it becomes painful and scares her, she loses control and ends up doing terrible things. She explains that's why her puppet is her hero, because he calms her down whenever she's agitated and about to lose control. Shido gently ruffles her hair, promising to help find her puppet. He adds that she won't need the puppet for protection anymore because he will be her hero. To his surprise, he immediately feels embarrassed and apologizes for having kissed her before. But Yoshino is clueless to the meaning of a kiss. When he attempts to show her again, Toka suddenly enters, intending to apologize for snubbing him. However, upon seeing them in that position, she grows angry again and storms off to her room to vent her frustrations on her innocent pillow. Shido receives news that Yoshino's puppet has been located, but it's at Tobi's residence. He promptly heads over for a surprise visit. Upon arriving, she greets him and hands him some awful-looking tea before heading off to the bathroom. During her absence, Shido quickly snoops around her house like a thief until he finds the puppet and returns to where he was sitting. Tobi returns from the bathroom looking suspicious and sits next to Shido, who is disturbed from his nap but manages to ask her about her hatred for spirits. He tries to convince her that not all spirits are evil, using Toka and Yoshino as examples. However, Tobi ultimately rejects his reasoning, claiming she will eliminate all spirits because one took her parents from her 5 years ago. Shido tells her that Toka's powers have been sealed, so she can no longer cause disasters. But Tobi insists no one knows what could happen at any moment. However, he asserts that he wants her to accept them and not Zikai since she's a decent girl. Suddenly, her phone rings, signaling an impending space earthquake, and she swiftly stands to leave. While heading out, Shido asks if she would attack a spirit that has lost its powers, and she replies that while she would like to, it all depends on her superior's orders. Meanwhile, the AST begins attacking Yoshino as she attempts to escape, successfully knocking her down. As they try to finish her off, she suddenly invokes Zadgil, who begins to counterattack while the AST continues to fire at her. While Yoshino escapes, Toka sees the commotion and rushes to the scene. In the meantime, Shido calls out to Yoshino from a distance, but as he tries to retrieve her puppet, Tobi fires a powerful laser weapon at Yoshino, causing Zadgil to prepare for an immediate offensive without considering Shido's presence. Recognizing Shido is in danger, Toka attempts to summon Sandalin but struggles to do so since her powers are sealed. Zadgil unleashes a massive attack from its mouth, but Toka manages to save Shido by finally activating Sandalin, which deflects the attack. Toka approaches Shido and apologizes for being so troublesome during the chaos. While the AST unleashes numerous attacks on Yoshino, Shido urges Toka to help him rescue Yoshino. But Toka's jealousy flares up, leading her to think Shido likes Yoshino more. Shido explains that Yoshino is a spirit like her, and that he promised to save her, making Toka realize this is similar to what Shido had done for her. She immediately pushes Sandalin to the ground and tells Shido to use it to reach Yoshino. Meanwhile, the AST is temporarily unable to attack due to the powerful force field that Zadgil created, as they would be hit by millions of ice shards if they approached. Tobi quickly generates a massive force field and lifts a building, intending to strike Yoshino with it. However, Toka appears out of nowhere and slices the structure in half. Seeing Toka, Tobi charges at her, while the other AST members shift their focus to her. With the attention diverted, Shido steps inside the force field created by Zadgil, despite his sister warning him that he could freeze to death. He successfully makes it through, albeit exhausted. Upon seeing him, Yoshino heals his injury and he hands over her puppet, eliciting a gleeful response from her. He then states that he needs to kiss her to save her, feeling embarrassed as he stumbles over his words. Notably, Toka witnesses this and grows furious, demanding of Shido whether this was his intent, leaving him speechless upon being caught in the act. Meanwhile, Kotori informs Shido that Toka will not be staying with him anymore, revealing that a new home has been constructed to accommodate spirits. One morning, Toka and Yoshino excitedly tell Shido they want to visit a hot spring after seeing an advertisement on television. He relays the message to Kotori, who has no choice but to comply, not wanting the spirits to become unruly. Meanwhile, the captain of the mecha team and her subordinates agree to also visit the hot springs to spend some leisurely time together, but Toby protests, insisting they should focus on training instead. However, she receives a call from Shido, asking if he can keep the book she gave him for 2 more days, citing something important. Suddenly, she hears Toka's voice in the background, causing her to become infuriated and crush the innocent little puppet in her hand. Soon afterward, the other girls head off to the hot springs, while Toka grows jealous upon seeing how Shido behaves around Yoshino. Meanwhile, the mecha team also boards an underground train heading to the same hot springs, but disguise their intentions as terrain evaluation to avoid being reprimanded by their superiors. However, their train soon breaks down, forcing them to continue their journey on foot. Shido and his girls follow along on foot, after Angry Bud's antics previously grounded their vehicle. Toka feels terrible for causing this inconvenience, but Shido, trying to act like the cool guy, reassures her that he isn't mad. Shortly after, the Fraxinus team detects the AST's approach towards the spirits, completely ignorant of the fact that the AST is coming for war. One of the crew orders them to stop the advancing spirits, leading Fraxinus to start setting up multiple barricades around the site to delay the next team, causing confusion as they wonder what's happening. The Toskar team begins launching various harmless attacks. Realizing the enemy is trying to deter them, they retaliate, resulting in massive destruction in the surrounding area. Meanwhile, as Shido and the girls continue their trek, a sudden explosion occurs above their heads, prompting them to drop to the ground, resulting in Yoshino losing her puppet. She begins to cry like a baby immediately, and everything begins to freeze as rain unexpectedly starts pouring. Shido rushes to calm her down, promising to recover her puppet as quickly as he can, causing the rain to cease. He sets off on his definitive search, while the AST and Ratatoskar continue their internal conflict. After evading explosions for a while, he spots the puppet, but just as he dusts it off, a terrible explosion heads in his direction. Just before it strikes, Toka creates a barrier that shields them both. Seeing Toka in her astral suit, the AST prepares to strike her, but before Toby can make a move, Toka vanishes with Shido, leaving them all stunned. Later, Kotori takes Shido and the girls to a cheap hot spring that her clueless assistant discovered while serving a punishment. The AST team also heads to the hot spring as initially planned. Meanwhile, Toby begins searching for Shido, having decided to come because of him but can't find him anywhere. Shortly after, Takami is introduced to the AST team as the girl who once guided Sekai to the spirit, impressing everyone in the team. She sits next to Toby, while the captain shows them previous footage of the fight against Yoshino. Toby inquires about the spirit she calmed, and Takami explains that it was different from the conventional ones they have faced, which is why she was transferred to this unit. As she speaks, she suddenly notices Shido on the screen, shocking Toby. After the meeting, Toby tells Takami that Shido never mentioned having another little sister, prompting Takami to ask if she knows him. Toby responds that they are lovers, which leaves Takami taken aback. A new transfer student, Kurumi, arrives at school, and when introduced, reveals that she is a spirit, startling everyone. She promptly asks someone to show her around the school after classes, and one boy raises his hand, but she ignores him, walking straight up to Shido to say that he is the one she wants. Meanwhile, the AST realizes that Kurumi is truly a spirit, pondering why she transferred to the school. Takami informs them that Kurumi is no ordinary spirit. She has transported over 10,000 people to another world with her own hands, in addition to the deaths caused by her spatial rifts. They are all astounded by this revelation. After school, Shido and Kurumi meet as planned while Toka and Toby eavesdrop out of jealousy, trying to decipher what the new girl wants with their crush. Following the advice of the foolish Fraxinus crew, Shido mistakenly asks Kurumi about the color of her plot armor, fearing she might get mad. Instead, the bold girl attempts to open her portal for him, but he quickly interrupts, asking what she meant by calling herself a spirit. However, she tells him not to play the fool, shocking him. He questions how she knows about him, but she refuses to divulge any information, instead stating that she has feelings for him since she learned about him. Shortly after, she grips his hand, and although Shido feels suspicious, the two nosy eavesdroppers stumble out of their hiding spot, revealing themselves. A short while after they separate, Kurumi whispers in Shido's ear that the next time they are alone, she will mount his dragon, and as she departs, Shido can only thank the heavens that Toka and Toby arrived just in time, as who knows what she would have done with his little sausage. On Kurumi's way out, she is intercepted by some bullies who want to praise her. She agrees to the group's plan, luring them into a corner where she literally devours them. Takami arrives just in time and prepares to battle her. 5 seconds later, Takami bumps into Shido as he heads home with his two companions, embracing him in joy, calling him brother, leaving Shido baffled about who this girl is. She follows him home, feeling elated that her brother is alive. But Kotori grows jealous and starts arguing with her about who is real and who isn't. Later, Shido asks her where she's been, and she replies that she's been working but refuses to disclose her job, leaving them to wonder what she's hiding. As the homeroom teacher calls the roll, they discover that Kurumi is absent, causing them to wonder why a new student would miss class on just her second day. Toishi mentions that she probably won't return, but just then, Kurumi suddenly appears in the classroom during the lesson. Shido receives a message from Kotori asking him to go to the physics lab during lunch. Later, Shido meets with Kotori and Rain, who show him footage of what happened to Kurumi the day before. They inform him that Takami and the AST attacked her and brutally transported her to another world. However, she came to school today, leaving them confused about what she truly is. Meanwhile, Toishi finds Kurumi in the locker room and questions why she's still alive after they attacked her yesterday. Kurumi instantly restrains her with eerie hands that suddenly grow from the ground, telling Takami that they're merely engaging in futile efforts, prompting her to ask what she desires. Kurumi reveals that she enrolled in the school because she wants Shido and all of his powers. Later, after school, Shido approaches Kurumi to ask her out on a date, as instructed by Kotori, to gather more information about her, and she happily agrees. Just as she leaves, Toby appears, asking what he was discussing with the devil, but he quickly dodges her question and leaves. Meanwhile, Toby reflects on everything Kurumi has said and done, worrying about Shido. Once home, Toka dances suspiciously in front of Shido, until he finds a note among her balloons revealing that she scheduled a date with him for the next day. While he's surprised, Toby also calls him, requesting to meet the next day. On the following day, Shido must meet all three girls without any of them discovering he's seeing the others, and Ratatoskar promises to help him fulfill the demands of all three without fail. He begins with Toka, and after spending some time with her at the aquarium, he fakes a stomachache as an excuse to step away, and meets up with Kurumi, who takes him to a clothing store to buy some revealing outfits. While at the store, some classmates spot him, and as they try to approach to accuse him of cheating, he fakes another stomachache, dashing off to find Toby in a different location. The two end up sitting in a restaurant for a meal, and he asks Toby why she wanted to meet him again. She tells him she doesn't want him to be alone, and adds that he must come home with her after the date, surprising him. During their meal, Shido suddenly spots Toka running, causing him to choke. He quickly apologizes and rushes to meet her. He navigates among all three girls, feeling exhausted from all the running around while trying to evade classmates who previously saw him with Yoshino. Meanwhile, Yoshino finds herself alone in a forest, noticing some thugs testing their weapons on a cat. She decides to intervene and make things more interesting for them. However, Ratatoskar loses track of her when the surveillance system suddenly goes offline, catching everyone off guard. Toby and Toka bump into each other, surprised to see one another. They realize that Shido is somewhere nearby, and Toby speculates that he must have brought a third girl, which explains why he isn't with them. She quickly rushes off to find him. When Shido returns to the location where he left Kurumi but finds her missing, he wonders where she could be. Kotori informs him they've lost her, and just then, they receive an alert about a massive spirit wave coming from the forest. Shido immediately rushes into the woods to find her. He is horrified to come upon a scene smeared in blood, spotting a severed foot on the ground. He witnesses Kurumi ruthlessly shooting a man while wearing a sinister smile, with a pre-installed Hublot watch in her left eye. He attempts to flee, but Kurumi ensnares him with her terrifying hands and approaches him, grasping him and licking her lips, preparing to begin her meal. Just then, Takami appears out of nowhere to rescue him, delivering massive blows with her special weapon that injures Kurumi before she can react. Shido is stunned and asks how she can be so calm about this after having just slain someone. She replies coolly that she is a spirit, and this is how she survives. She explains further that Kurumi is a special type of spirit, and no matter how many times they eliminate her, she keeps coming back to life. Takami adds that this is why she needs to continue isekaiing, as Kurumi enjoys sending people to nirvana. Shido tries to defend Kurumi, but Takami isolates him with a barrier and approaches Kurumi, preparing to strike the final blow. Feeling despair, Shido reflects on how he once believed all spirits were good, but this notion has changed since he met Kurumi. He tells Kotori that he wants to give up, but she slaps him across the cheek, telling him to stop being a coward, as giving up is not an option for him. Later, as he heads home from school, Toka finds him and drags him away to have fun. That night, Shido shares with her that he needs to stop Kurumi from sending more people to Nirvana, but struggles to find a way to communicate with her, as she seems so different from Yoshino. Toka tells him that Kurumi is also a spirit and not inherently different from them. She adds that if it weren't for him, she too might have become like Kurumi, stating that the only difference between her and Kurumi is that someone extended a caring hand to her, boosting Shido's confidence. The next day, he meets with Kurumi, determined to tell her that he will save her and stop her from sending people to Nirvana. You would think she would be touched by his kind gesture, but she dashes to the rooftop, creating chaos and testing whether he's being sincere. She stains the cameraman's lens with blood, affecting the school building and causing students to fall to the ground. Meanwhile, Takumi confronts Kotori for putting Shido in danger by sending him unarmed and alone against spirits. She claims she will take care of him from now on, but Kotori chuckles, stating she will never entrust Shido to a corrupt company like Deus Ex Machina Industries, shocking Takami, as she wonders how Kotori knows about them. Kotori reveals that they analyzed her saliva and found that the company infused her body with excessive magic, reducing her life expectancy to 10 years, further shocking Takami, who was unaware of this. They both receive a call about the situation unfolding at school and head off immediately. Meanwhile, Shido notices Toka writhing in pain and wonders why he is the only one not affected. Rain informs him that it's because Toka and Yoshino's powers are sealed within him. Kurumi calls Shido to the rooftop, urging him to come up if he has anything to discuss with her. He heads up immediately, while Tobi activates her mechanical armor and also makes her way to the roof, only to be intercepted by one of Kurumi's clones. Realizing that Shido might be in danger going up alone, Toka decides to unlock her powers but is suddenly attacked by another Kurumi on the roof. Shido asks Kurumi what the hell she's doing, and she responds that it's a time-consuming Fortressa barrier that saps the time from anyone who steps into its shadow. Shocked, Shido listens as she explains that the Hublot watch in her left eye represents her lifespan, and every time she uses her magic it drains some of that life. To replenish it, she occasionally does so through this method. She then tells Shido that he is the main reason she came here because she wishes to consume his flesh in the traditional way. Hearing this, Shido pleads for her to keep the others out of it, insisting he is the one she came for. However, she demands that he discard the trash he previously said about saving her before she can agree. He begs her to remove the barrier, but he refuses to give up on her, infuriating her. Then she summons a spatial earthquake, immediately triggering the spatial earthquake alarm, shocking everyone at Fraxinus. However, Rain informs Shido that Kurumi's mental state is changing as if she is fearful of him. In a desperate act, he climbs onto the railing and threatens to strip down, asserting that if she really wants to eat him, she needs to stop. Kurumi tells him to shut it. However, Shido suddenly jumps off the building, landing on the ground below. He warns her that he'll bite his tongue if she doesn't clean the blood from the cameraman's lens. Instantly, she wipes it with a snap of her fingers. Shido then begins preaching about salvation, making her rethink her approach, and she tries to grasp his hand to embrace the salvation he's offering. Just then, another Kurumi stabs her in the back, causing her to scream instantly. Kurumi captures Shido with her terrifying arms, attempting to touch him, but Takumi suddenly intervenes, striking Kurumi heavily with her special weapon before Kurumi can retaliate. Toka and Tobi appear on the rooftop, but before they can make a move, Kurumi summons a multitude of her time remnants. She tells Takami that this is why she can never eliminate her opponents, because she has different versions of herself from various times. She restrains them and activates another time-space, but Kotori suddenly appears and counters with an equally powerful force, stunning everyone at the sight of her in an astral dress. She then summons her weapon and prepares for battle. An intense fight begins, and after several exchanges, Kurumi suddenly halts time, summoning all her clones to rain fire upon Kotori. Kurumi approaches to deliver the final shot to her head, causing her to fall to the ground. Believing she has won, Kurumi is taken aback when Kotori's wounds heal instantly, and she stands back up, shocking Kurumi. In response, Kurumi quickly calls forth her clones to attack again, but they explode as they converge around Kotori. Desperate to regain the upper hand, Kurumi shoots herself to unleash more power, immediately weakening Kotori as she prepares for another attack. Kurumi mocks her just before Kotori invokes a very powerful weapon, which obliterates Kurumi's clones and destroys her Hublot watch. Kurumi falls to her knees, exhausted. As Kotori prepares for another strike, Shido fears for her life and tries to warn her, but when she doesn't respond, he rushes forward to block the impending explosion. Kotori fires her cannon, but immediately realizes Shido is there. Shido then wakes up in a hospital room, finding himself in a dreamlike state alongside Kotori amidst chaos. Seeing Rain, he begins to ask numerous questions, eager to confirm everyone's safety. Suddenly, Rain gently places his head on soft pillows, reassuring him that everything is fine, even though Kurumi managed to escape. Rain guides him to where Kotori is, and upon finding her, he inquires if she is a spirit, She responds that she is human, despite the data suggesting otherwise. She explains that she was born human but transformed 5 years ago into a spirit, or rather, became a human with the powers of a spirit. Shido recalls a dream he had regarding past events and shares this insight with her, surprising her with the possibility of truth. He then inquires how she became a spirit, but Kotori admits she barely remembers. He asks how they could forget something so important, and she suggests it's possible someone erased their memories. Shido presses further, wondering how she has been able to suppress her powers since then. She reveals that it was he who sealed them, astonishing her. She adds that no one knows why he possesses the ability to seal the powers of spirits, which is why Ratatoskr chose him to be the one to contact them. Shido again asks how he has healing powers, and she informs him they are actually hers, leaving him stunned. She pulls him forward and punches him lightly, saying he would have died if she hadn't come to her senses because whenever she regains her powers, she occasionally loses control and feels a strong desire to destroy things in isekai. He asks if her powers will return to him, and she states that they won't unless he seals them again, like he did with Toka and Yoshino, since she has regained 100% of her powers. To seal them again, he needs to date her and make her fall in love with him, shocking him. Suddenly, Kotori collapses and Rain rushes to attend to her. Later, Rain informs Shido that Kotori can only maintain her spiritual energy for 2 more days. After that, she will completely lose herself, and will no longer be the Kotori he knows. He must have a date with her in 2 days to seal her powers again. Shido then visits Takami in the hospital but is denied access. Instead, he encounters Toka, who later asks him about the flame spirit that appeared during the battle against Kurumi. He admits that he was knocked out too, refusing to elaborate further. He then questions why she is concerned about it, and she reveals that it was that spirit that burned her parents before her eyes 5 years ago. Since then, she has been searching for it, which led her to join the AST and begin hunting spirits for revenge. After this, Shido prepares for his date with Kotori, having wasted too much time with the other girls. Later that night, he meets with Ratatoskr's vice commander, who tells him how uninformed he is about sealing Kotori's powers. The officer mentions having footage from the day of the Great Fire 5 years ago, and asks if Shido would like to see it, suggesting it might help him understand how he sealed Kotori's powers back then. When Shido later reviews the footage, he sees a strange figure alongside himself and Kotori that day, deducing that this figure must have been responsible for her powers. He strains to remember what transpired, but it becomes overwhelming, causing him to break down. The next day, on the day of the date, he meets Kotori, and they begin their outing. He tries all the pickup techniques he learned online, but they fall flat. Frustrated, he wonders what on earth he will do, as at this rate he will never be able to save her. After a while, Kotori apologizes, and as she leaves, Shido heads to speak with the Fraxinus crew regarding some other lines he could potentially use. As he walks, he is shockingly surprised to see Rain attending to Kotori, who is in pain. He hides behind them to listen to their conversation, and discovers that Kotori has been using medication to stabilize herself since regaining her powers, but she doesn't want him to know so that he won't date her out of pity. Returning to the beach, when Kotori is back, Shido tosses away his covered earbuds he was using to communicate with Fraxinus, those idiots. He decides to unleash his inner god, Tiras, and suggests they head to the amusement park. Meanwhile, Toby encounters her superior, who shows her the new equipment they just received. She asks if this can be utilized to defeat Efrit, Tiras's spirit. Toby is taken aback and wants to see the footage, only to discover that the flame spirit she has always pursued is actually Kotori. Meanwhile, Shido and Kotori enjoy some fun together, and after a while they sit down to chat. Kotori is so in the mood that she expects him to kiss her. During this time, a report reaches Toby's superior at the SD regarding the new tech going missing, along with some ammunition, causing her to immediately recall Toby's question about whether the new equipment could defeat Efrit, leading her to realize that Toby must have invaded to use them. Shido attempts to ask Kotori about what happened 5 years ago, but suddenly, she is attacked, sending him into shock. When he turns to see who it is, he finds it to be Toby. He angrily questions what on earth she was thinking. She explains that she just tried to take down Kotori. However, Kotori reappears abruptly and calls Toby an idiot for underestimating her. Immediately, Toby starts unleashing heavy firepower against Kotori with her massive cannons. Kotori shifts into her astral form and summons her weapon, leading to an intense exchange of attacks that devastate the surrounding area. Toka and Yoshino, on the other side of the amusement park, notice the turbulence and deduce that Kotori and Shido must be facing a powerful enemy. Toka attempts to lend a hand, but Yoshino's puppet tries to convince her otherwise, given that their spiritual powers are currently sealed. Nevertheless, Toka argues that since Shido is doing his utmost to save Kotori, she will do everything in her power to protect him. She promptly dashes into her astral form. Seeing this, Yoshino decides to join her in defending him. As the battle continues, Kotori blocks Toby's powerful attacks, erecting multiple barriers. However, she suddenly feels weak, realizing that she has overexerted herself. Toby quickly seizes the opportunity to ensnare her with two glowing cords from her cannon before delivering another brutal strike. Yet, Kotori manages to protect herself. She then charges at Toby, attempting to damage her equipment until it malfunctions. At this point, Kotori has gone feral, not caring if she transports herself to another world, even as Shido loudly screams for her to stop. She summons her weapon again, ready to erase her lineage, but Toby reveals that this is how she dispatched her parents 5 years ago. Shocked, Kotori collapses to the ground. Toby immediately readies her weapon again and starts firing at Kotori, who successfully deflects the shots with a barrier. Shido quickly intervenes, urging Toby to stop attacking. She ignores him, asserting that she has lived solely for this purpose over the past 5 years, and accuses him of merely chasing after the spirit of flames instead of his sister. Confused by his words, Toby retorts that Kotori is the spirit of flames. She prepares to fire another attack, but Toka and Yoshino suddenly appear, distracting her, allowing Shido to swiftly pull Kotori away from the chaotic scene while the other girls engage Toby. Shido confesses his feelings for Kotori, leaving her flustered. She reciprocates, leading him to finally kiss her, sealing her powers and instantly healing her wounds. He then turns to Toby, asking her to recognize that she is after Efrit, and the spirit is currently inside him, not his sister. He reminds her that it was Efrit who took her parents 5 years ago, not Kotori. Toby fails to comprehend what he's talking about, so he explains that someone else must be responsible for what happened to Kotori. As Toby reaches her limit, she attempts to fire her standard weapon but collapses from exhaustion. Meanwhile, Kurumi reappears on the other side of Volantis, heading back to Fraxinus. Rain informs Shido that his encounter with Kotori has made no difference. However, she reveals that Kotori's emotional levels have always been maxed out concerning him because she has feelings for him. Kotori, embarrassed, immediately kicks Shido to the ground, claiming that the machine must be broken. Afterward, Kotori states she finally remembers the spirit from 5 years ago, but since they cannot rule out the possibility that someone erased their memories, they need to store the information outside their heads. Kotori prepares to leave the location, and before departing asks Shido if what he said to her yesterday was true. He confirms that it is, but he only loves her like a sister. This marks the end of the first part. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more amazing content. If you watched all the way to the end, comment the secret word time traveler below, and I'll give your comment a heart. See you next time for more adventures in Data Live.